Hey everyone, welcome to our small footprint. My name is Nyssa, and if you're new here, we are a family of 8 who live off-grid in Australia. I have been really slack. It's been like 4 days since I put a video out. I had all these good intentions. I had discussed about trying to schedule days, you know, doing like I think I said a Sunday, Tuesday, Friday or something like that. And then there was issues with losing the work that I lost, and that sort of put everything in upheaval. I have so many balls in the air at the moment that I'm struggling to complete any one thing at a time at the moment because there's just so many things going on. So I do need to do a little bit of a chat and catch up video, but I was waiting until I got a few extra things completed before I did that, because we talked about the Patreon and stuff like that. So all that stuff was still just in progress. So I wanted to wait till I had that sorted before I did a bit of a chat video. And then I got my notes done up for a voiceover video, but I struggle sometimes to find the time to do the voiceover. So I have just finished canning black beans, and it's, I don't know, it's like, what, it's 4:15, so it's almost time to start a dinner prep. And if I had have started dinner prep, then by the time I'd finished dinner, it would be getting down, it would be dusk. We'd have the generator running to top up the solar, things like that, and that would all impact the ability to do the voiceovers as well. The new buildings, once they're finished, will hopefully help with that, because there'll be a bit of a somewhere I can go that's away from everyone else, though I won't have all the wildlife noises if I do that. But at least I can get some consistency with getting some stuff done, which would be nice. At the moment we're all just in too much close quarters for me to do much in the way of like voiceovers in the space where everyone else is, so I have to come out here to the garden to do it, and I just don't get out here. And then it gets another day past, and then I finish dinner and I start working for the evening, and if I've got a voiceover, I can then put a video together. It can upload overnight and I can put it up the next morning. But if I don't have the voiceover, then I can't get the video sorted. And anyway, it's all just a little bit all over the place at the moment, just trying to figure out what we're doing, doing the work with Darryl and stuff like that, and we're doing a rebrand of things for him. And anyway, so I have another food prep video for you for February's food prep, and I was thinking about these videos, and I tend to title them the month and meal prep planning and preserving post the 6 weekly grocery haul or whatever. Just it catches words for people to look at and things like that for the YouTube algorithm, but it's not necessarily right. It's not necessarily accurate, because I tend to do this all month during that it is post a 6-month grocery haul, but it's the whole 6 weeks of it, and it's food prep and planning. And I don't know, maybe I need to think of a title that still fills the need to get all those, you know, catchphrases and stuff in there, but just has like each month's worth of doing. So this is February's, and then March is, well, I shop early March. I didn't shop in February, I shopped in January. This is February's, and then I'll have March, and some months I don't shop at all, but I still have all these food prep, planning, preserving videos. And a lot of people, I think, just divvy these videos up into like single items. Like, you know, I canned black beans today, I could have a video about canning black beans, but that's not what I tend to do. I find that I don't have clear enough footage and things like that or whatever to create instructional videos. It's not really my thing. I tend to prefer to do these, like, they're basically day in the lives, but it's the day in the life of my kitchen over a couple of days each video. You know, see how I'm finding it difficult? Anyway, I'm rambling as per usual, talking out loud and getting feedback in the comments, which is what I enjoy. That's part of the whole community aspect of this, is that I know that all my regulars will give me feedback in the comments of what they think I should do and how I should do it. And maybe, again, we're looking at the Patreon thing, maybe that's a good way too of having somewhere else that we can get more input into the videos, though the comments on the videos help with the YouTube algorithm and stuff too. So it's one of those things about creating the community and the atmosphere and enjoying the videos and everything else, but also keeping it a business too, to make sure that it's worthwhile continuing to do. And, you know, it's all, as I said, balls in the air at the moment. It's all a little messy. But anyway, this is February's food prep, planning and preserving. I think this is like part 6, maybe. I didn't check the numbers before I came out, and because I'm out here with just a notebook in the middle of the garden underneath solar, I can't check unless I want to walk all the way inside and come back. I suppose I could check on my phone, but does it really matter? I can put a voice, like a text over it if I'm really wrong, but I think this is part 6 of this month's thing. And see, that's why it's not working with the titles. I have to think about it. So anyway, next couple of days of what I've done with all the food and stuff and sharing, and enjoy watching. Alrighty, starting off with the leftover turkey rolls. So we got 2 of these rolled turkey roast things in the monthly food hamper from Aberdeen Pantry, and this is the first one that I used. So I defrosted it overnight in the fridge, and then yesterday I used some of it on quesadillas for breakfast, which was really tasty. It's very salty. It's like a brined meat, and it has the texture of meat in that it falls apart a little bit, but it definitely has a processed texture to it as well, but very pleasant, and the filling is quite nice. It says something about chestnuts or something in the filling, in the stuffing, and it is quite pleasant to taste. So it does have a little bit of an unusual texture, but it's tasty. The next one I might bake, so I might defrost it and then I'll bake it in the oven and slice it up hot, and maybe we'll serve it with like gravy and veggies and mashed potato and see how we like it like that. Not that we are guaranteed to ever get anything like this again, but it gives us an idea. So I decided to make a quick fried rice with this bit that was left over, because I had leftover plain rice from dinner the night before as well. And Darryl was out with a couple of the kids. I can't remember what they were doing, but they weren't home. So I thought it was good because it had holed over for when they got back as well, because it's pretty good to just sit and be rewarmed if need be. So I scrambled a dozen eggs and just in the cast iron pan just scrambled them off, fried off the leftover rice from dinner the night before, and then added some tin corn, some sesame oil, soy sauce and oyster sauce. It's super simple but filling. Put that turkey roll in there as well and just mixed it all up. So it was just a very basic fried rice type dish, though, you know, that's stretching it to call it fried rice, but it was tasty, and it was something that could be reheated for the people who weren't home once they got home as well, which was the idea. For dinner, we're going to have birria. I'm trying out my new pressure cooker that Susan sent me. So Susan sent me a bunch of things, and I'm very grateful. She looked up canning jars, and it was cheaper to buy them on Amazon US and get them sent to me here than it was to buy them here. And so I've got a couple of flats of quart jars and some 4-ounce jelly jars, some faceted jelly jars, and it's amazing. But the other thing that she sent me was this Presto pressure cooker, stovetop pressure cooker, which I've looked at buying so that I wasn't using my canners as pressure cookers. And this is a really nice stainless steel one. So I wanted to give it a go. So I was going to make birria. I've got the short ribs in the fridge that I bought at the shopping that I wanted to use that for. So I cut up and de-seeded some dried guajillo chilies. I'm pressure cooking this dish so I don't have to soak the chilies before I use them in the dish. As I said, I got those short ribs, and then I've got some of the beef chunks that I'd split from the trim that I had cut up as well. So I had, the short ribs were, I think it was like 1.5 kilos, but I know that there's not a whole lot of meat on them, but it's going to give flavour by having the bones in there as well. So then I think I did 1 kilo of the beef trim as well. So this is not a cheap meal. The short ribs were probably like $23 or something, 1.5 kilos at about $15 a kilo, and the beef trim was about 1 kilo, which would have been about $10 worth as well. So you're looking at like $35 worth of meat here. This is definitely not a cheap meal, but it's something that we have as a treat every now and again. So I browned all the beef off first. The short ribs and the chunk beef, I just browned it off in the bottom of the pan with some oil. Now the heat was a little high. This is stainless steel. I don't cook in stainless steel very often, so it's burned up it's charred up the sides a little bit. It's all going to add flavor. I'm not concerned in this particular point, and it'll scrub off easily because it's stainless steel. But I did have to remember that on a gas hob, definitely didn't need to be as hot for stainless steel as I run it for cast iron. Definitely a different style of cooking, so I have to remember that in future. Once it was all browned off, which I did in batches so that it browned off without stewing, I cooked off the onion and the garlic, added the whole spices, so the cinnamon sticks and bay leaves and things like that, as well as the ground spices. I can't remember, there's some cumin in it, and I can't remember off the top of my head. It was a fairly standard birria recipe. It was out of my notebook, so I've obviously pulled it from a few different places, but pretty standard sort of a birria flavor profile. And simmered that off. I think there's some tomato paste in there as well. Deglazed the pan with some stock and then added all the beef and juices back in. And then I think there's a little bit more stock added as well. I'm pretty sure I just used one of my Fowler's 36s, which is about 1.2 litres of stock, and I just poured that in, topped it up with water to cover the meat if need be. I like the extra liquid in there, so I'm happy to add that bit of water. Put the lid on, brought it up to pressure, and then when it was hissing like it's supposed to, cooked it for, I think it was 45 minutes. I'll check that and I'll put a note on the screen if it took longer, but I'm pretty sure it was 45 minutes. I will double check. So while that was cooking, the leftover tomato paste, so I had only used like 2 tablespoons of tomato paste or something in it, and I didn't have anything open, and I buy it in the jar. Now, most of what I cook in bulk, so I can use a whole jar in, but for something like this, I only need a little bit, and there is occasions that I do things like this that only need a little bit. So with all the leftover, I grabbed an ice tray out of the freezer, stuck it all in the ice tray, and then stuck it in the freezer. Now, getting them out of these non-silicone ice trays is not super fun, but I don't have any small silicone ice trays at the moment, only big like 2 tablespoon size ones, which would have been a bit too much for tomato paste. So we will see how well I get this out. I may end up having to defrost it slightly to scrape it out and then put it on a tray, or I wasn't thinking about it at the time. Silicone is much better for doing this sort of a thing, freezing rather than a rigid ice tray, but it is what it is. That's what I did. So that means that it's in sort of dessert spoon size bits, I suppose, half a tablespoon dessert spoon type size. After the pot had been at pressure for long enough, I turned it off and I let it natural release. So it takes about 15-20 minutes for a pressure cooker to release naturally. Some dishes, when you cook them, they say quick release, so you just turn the valve without getting in the way and let it quickly spurt all the pressure out. I find that generally speaking, a natural release is better for holding the juices in the meat, because if you're quick releasing, then things tend to seize a little bit. But I suppose there's probably a point to it in some things, but I find most meat dishes I like to natural release. Once all the pressure had gone out of the pot, it's safe to open up. So I opened it up and I checked it, and as you can see, the bone slipped straight out of those ribs. So that's a good sign as that it's all cooked. Now, I didn't trim the ribs as much as I probably should have. So there was a little bit of fat and chewy like silver skin type things in there, but I thought that it would be easier to just pull the meat off it once it was cooked than to sit there and peel it off while it was raw. So that's the way I did it, but you can pull all that off before you cook it if you want. Depends on who you're serving it to. My being that it's in my kitchen for my family, the fact that I'm going to use my hands to shred that meat off that silver skin, they don't care, so, and I don't care, and so it works well that way. I pulled all the meat and the bones out of the pot because I want to blend the sauce. So that meant that I could pull all the meat off the bones at the same time. So I could put the bones aside, all the meat, strip all the meat off, and then have just the sauce left. I used the immersion blender to blend the sauce. I did pull out the bay leaves and the cinnamon sticks, but everything else stays in there. And that way we're getting all those chilies, the guajillos chilies, all blended into the sauce as well. There's plenty of fat in that sauce as well, which is another reason why I didn't want to trim those short ribs, because that fat is used for dipping the tortillas in for cooking. So blended it all up and then put some aside in a wide bowl so that I could dip my tortillas in it. So the way we cook it is we had tacos for dinner using this. As I said, it's a bit of a decadent, expensive meal, but it's super tasty and it's not something we have very often. A lot of these meals I really should make sides for. Like if we had had leftover rice of some sort, or, you know, something like that. But at the same time, every now and again you have a meal that costs far more than another one because the other one cost next to nothing, and it evens out in the end. So we made tacos. So I bought the small flour tortillas from Costco, the little packs. I can't remember the name of the brand, but it's They're little flour tortillas that work really well for this. Corn tortillas work really well for this sort of thing too, but the little flour ones are nice. So I had bought them from Costco purposely for this because I'd bought the short ribs on sale. So you dip the small tortilla into the oil and on top of the birria, and then you place that in the pan with the oil on the tortilla. Then we used some of the cheese that we had from yesterday. I don't remember what I cooked it for now, it's too long ago, but the dairy-free cheese that I make in the Thermomix that I then refrigerate, and it ends up being basically like a cheese spread. So we put that on there and then put the beef on there, and then you flip it over so that it's a taco shape, and you cook both sides, and you end up with this spicy, flavorful, crispy taco full of beef and cheese, and it is just really nice. Darryl and I do serve it also with some consomme in a little bowl, and we dip the taco into the consomme as we're, I don't know if that's how it's said. It has the accent on the E, so I always assumed it was consomme, but do correct me if I'm wrong. I just realized that I'm saying it how I think it's said, but I don't know if I've ever heard it said. Anyway, we like to have little bowls of it, and we dip the taco into that liquid and then eat it. It's really messy, but really tasty. And then I put the rest of the consomme that was left in the fridge to use for something else. I didn't really know what at the time, but I put it in the fridge so that I could use it for something else. Most of the beef is out of it, but and we ate all that beef, but there's little shreds of it in that sauce, and the sauce has all that flavor and fat and stuff in it as well, so we put that in the fridge. Next day we started out with some flatbreads. I was taking some process photos as I was making them, as I'd had a friend ask me for the recipe and I'd given it to her, and then she'd asked me some other questions while she was making them about, clarifications on things to do with the recipe, which was great because it gave me more of an idea of the things that people might ask and the clarifications I might need to make for the recipe for people to be able to use it adequately, because I know that I do a lot of my cooking fairly instinctually and not everyone has that. So that's the other sort of aspect that I was thinking. I'm going off track here a little bit with the whole Patreon thing too, is that if I have a smaller focus group to do some testing of recipes and stuff, and to give me that solid feedback on, what the more information that they need in certain aspects so that they know what they're doing, or to interpret the recipe appropriately, and a little bit more clinical on the recipe rather than just that doing it by feel sort of a thing. So I did my standard flatbread recipe, and as I said, I was just taking shots as I went through. I've been trialing cooking the flatbreads in halves, a bit like I steam the bao buns. I saw it on Instagram, but they did it in a pizza oven, and I wondered if I could do the same sort of thing on a pan with a bit of oil. So I roll them out round, but I spray the inside of them, fold them in half, and then just cook them on the sides. And then when you open them up, they're sort of soft on the inside, crunchy on the outside. I think this would work really well with sourdough that's actually almost like pizza dough and done in the pizza oven on the stovetop, and they'd only take a minute or two. I might have to try it at some point. I think it would be a fairly simple process, but at the same time, by doing them in halves, it saves me time in the cast iron because I can do 4 or 5 at a time in a cast iron pan, whereas when I'm doing them round, I can only fit 2, maybe 3 in each pan. So that was the idea behind it. They were really nice and they're really easy to eat because it's a bit like a taco, pre-folded, you stuff them and you eat them. So it was just another thing that I was testing out. So my flatbread dough I use for a whole bunch of different style flatbreads. I use it for naan style. I stuff it with cheese sometimes and do cheesy garlic naans. I can roll it out really thin like a tortilla, or I can do it puffy in a bit of oil, a bit like a langos, though I do make langos differently with mashed potato, with boiled potato in the dough as well, which are one of our favorite things to do. I don't do it that often though because it's so bad for you. Or just dry like a plain flatbread, not as thin as a tortilla. This dough is very versatile in all these different ways. It just depends on how you want to roll it. So if you're going to roll it really thin like a tortilla, then you want to dip it in a bit of flour before you roll it out, but you also want to make sure that it's had that sort of good rest time as well, otherwise it'll tear. And if you want it to be puffy, then you want it to have had a little bit of a rest, and then you use your fingers to indent it, fold it in half, rather than using a rolling pin. So I really enjoy using this dough for a range of things, and I think I've got this really great ratio going that works well for it. Anyway, you know, rambling again. I heated up a jar of pork to use with them, so it was just a jar of pork off the shelf. I canned that on like the last video or the video before. Plain pulled pork. Just let some of the water off in the, some of the juices off into the, down the, like poured off some of the juices before putting it in the pan. Otherwise it gets a little stew-like rather than being crispy. And then gently broke it up in the pan so it gets a little bit crispy on like pulled pork. And we just had them with some mayo and coleslaw like normal. Very standard meal for us. Some sort of a meat with mayo and coleslaw in flatbreads is a very standard lunch for us. That's our sandwich equivalent, I suppose you could say. I then wanted to use a bunch more bananas. We've been freezing a whole lot, but they are taking up a lot of room in the freezer, and whilst it's fantastic to have them in there, and I just bought that 500 litre freezer thinking that that would be massive amounts of space, we are filling it pretty quick because I've been able to buy things like extra boxes of bananas to freeze because I've got the space, but we're going through the space pretty quickly too. So we have been freezing a whole lot, but we do have a whole lot that are going really ripe as well. So I did another double batch of my standard banana bread. There is a short and a reel with my recipe for that. I'll try and remember to link it, but we all know how much I suck at doing that. So standard double batch of chocolate chip banana bread. It's an old favorite, we love it. I'm working on a bit of a muffin recipe at the moment where I mix up all the dry ingredients in a jar, and then you only have to add the wet. And the intent for this was more for Sonnet than anything else, because Sonnet loves to bake, but she has a tendency to miss ingredients in a list. And then we end up with like pancakes that have no baking powder in it or things like that. So I was trying to just simplify it for her, also because it just reduces time required. Like sometimes when she wants to bake, and that's fine, but I need her in and out of the kitchen in half an hour too. So I'm making up like this dry mix for muffins, and then the list of wet, and then a choice of what she can put in them. So you can, this one has 2 cups of like mashed banana in it with a couple of chocolate chips, but I'm going to try a grated apple and cinnamon one as well, and things like that. So I'll give her a couple of options, really nice and simple, laid out on a recipe sheet so that she can follow it herself. So as I said, this one I did with banana, so it's just 2 cups of mashed banana is like the mix-in for this, and dropped a couple of choc chips in the middle. Now we don't put choc chips on the top of things here because then children go along and steal the choc chips off the top and everyone else complains. So they have to go in the middle of our baked goods. So a couple of choc chips in the middle, banana muffins. They turned out really, really well. I've made them 2 or 3 times now. They rose very uniformly, and they were very tasty. So the only thing is that with banana, it ends up really moist. We do need to store them in the fridge in this weather. For dinner, I had that leftover birria consomme that I'd put in the fridge, and I wasn't sure what I was going to do. So one of the things I thought I might do was chicken legs. So I do chicken legs much the same way. I defrost them, and once they're defrosted, I dredge them in a baking powder, garlic, onion, salt mixture, and then I start roasting them. This makes the skin crisp up really well. It gives it a real nice texture for the skin, and then I glaze them, and normally I do like a miso Asian style glaze, but I reckon this birria would work as a glaze. So I did the normal, I dredged them all in that powdered mix, and then put them on a rack over a baking tray so that they don't cook in their own juices, they're getting nice and crispy. I was never a huge fan of chicken legs, to be honest, until I started cooking them this way. This is one of my favorite ways to eat them. Probably the only way I would choose to eat them if I had a choice, to be honest. I'm not a huge fan of chicken legs, but this really works for me. So they're on that rack over a tray. They roast and they crisp up and they brown up from that spice mix on the spice and baking powder mix that's on the skin. And then in the last sort of 15 minutes of cook time, I normally have a probe in one of them to check the internal temperatures, and I just check internal temperatures throughout the whole tray with the different locations of them. And in that last 10 or 15 minutes, I baste them. Now I have a basting brush, and I remember a couple of videos ago I said I didn't have a basting brush because I think the kids had used it for paper mache, and that flour and water glue, all the bristles came out. So a viewer has sent me a new silicone basting brush, thank you very much. So I had a basting brush to use this time, and I basted it with the birria mix. Now the birria was quite solid when I first got out of the fridge, which didn't work real well for basting, but I just left it on the beside the stove and it warmed up and got more liquidy in certain sections, and I used that. So I just baste it every 5 minutes or whatever while it's cooking, and that gets all sticky and tasty on the chicken legs. We tend to serve them the same way. That's how we eat them, with mashed potato and steamed veg, a little bit of ghee over the veg and a bit of salt and things like that, and that's just the way we like to eat them. So that was the next couple of days of food and how we used it. So those chicken legs were in the freezer. So you saw me cook some earlier on and then vacuum seal and freeze and meal portions. I think I've still got 2 bags in the freezer for over the next 2 weeks. Food has something I'm thinking pretty hard about in the next couple of weeks and planning the groceries for, because money's a little lower. So I did get that severance pay, which means that I probably will still spend the same amount as normal on groceries this month and try and boost up stocks a little bit of things that we definitely will go through, and our staples and things like that, with the plan that the next couple of groceries might be a little bit on the less income side. We will see how we go. We do have work coming in various different places, and I'm trying to get this website, and we'll sort the Patreon out, and I might get some I normally make mugs for the kids for winter, so I'm working on some more artwork for those, and we'll see how we go. So, but I'm going to err on the side of caution and consider the fact that the severance pay is going to cover this grocery at a normal rate. I've got rates due and stuff like that, so it's going to cover all that, and we're not struggling. We're not struggling at all, but it might mean that the next month might be a little tighter. So I'm going to work on this month needing to have some staples sorted, so that next month, if there's a little bit less income, then we'll figure it out. So that was all sidetracked. I shouldn't be doing videos at this time of the afternoon because my brain's running a mile a minute and I'm thinking about everything else that needs to get done. So there's 2 more bags of those chicken legs in the freezer, so that's good, and amongst whatever else we have to share and all the other food. So I'm going to keep on doing these. It's a few days at once of this food, and as I said earlier, I don't know whether they quite fit the way that I originally started doing them, as just the week of what I did with the food, because it's sort of it's almost a what I eat in 2 days sort of thing. Like, I could do a what we eat in a week videos, but I put a little bit more detail into each meal than really fits comfortably in a what we eat in a week. So this style of video is much better for that, I think, and everyone seems to enjoy it. So feedback, comments, as I said, I'm looking at Patreon and stuff, and maybe that will be good to have discourse in there about this kind of thing, and you can all give me feedback on that as well, and we can work at the channel progressing together, and you can all be part of that too. So anyway, I'm going to go and make dinner. I am making, what did I've got? I've got chicken mince out, and I'm going to make a chicken meatball cashew chicken stir fry for dinner tonight. There's a recipe on Recipe 10 Eats, which I'm basing it off. I basically just did a Google for chicken mince recipes. I need to make chicken sausage rolls, spring rolls, but I've run out of cabbage. So I don't know whether I might get Darryl to check in town what the cabbage is like, but they're probably far more expensive than I want to pay, so it might just mean that we don't do them this month, we do them next month when I've got some fresh cabbage. I don't know, we'll see. Same as like rice pepper rolls. I could make rice pepper rolls with chicken mince, but we don't have any cucumbers. I think the kids are down to the last kilo of carrots too, so they probably don't have any spare carrots. I'd prefer to cut them up as carrot sticks for the kids to eat, so we'll see. Anyway. Tangents, man, tangents. So thank you for joining me again today, and I will see you on the next video. Bye guys.